into the Performing Arts Studio. My name is Daniel Simon. I'm the editor-in-chief at World Literature Today. On behalf of our executive director, Dr. R.C. Davis-Indiana, and all my colleagues at WLT, it's a rare privilege and a true pleasure to introduce our visiting writers and to welcome you here tonight. I'd like to begin by recognizing and thanking our co-sponsors for this two-day celebration of contemporary American poetry. Can you hear? Is it? Yeah. The Office of OU President David L. Bourne, the Mark Allen Everett Poetry Series, the Focus Distinguished Lecture Series, the Judaic and Israel Studies Program, the Department of Modern Languages, Literatures, and Linguistics, and the South Central MLA. Without their generous support, this gathering would not have been possible. And here comes the 7:15. Yeah. Still rolling. Without their generous support, this evening would not have been possible. I'd like to thank in particular the Everett family and Nancy Yock for their ongoing support of the Everett series, of which this week's events are but the latest installment in a multi-year commitment to bringing the best contemporary poetry to Oklahoma. One of the great things about working for WLT is that not only do we get to publish writers from around the globe who write as if their lives depend on it. You still here? Yeah. In the words of Ethney Magazine. But we also get to invite many of these authors to the University of Oklahoma to interact with our students, colleagues, and the literary community in Central Oklahoma. A crucial part of WLT's evolving mission is putting students in proximity to the makers of literature. And with us tonight are two authors who share a lifelong commitment to teaching and mentoring aspiring writers. At the conclusion of tonight's reading, please stay for the reception and the book signing to follow. Books are available for sale in the back, and we encourage you to take advantage of this unique opportunity to meet our distinguished guests, Gerald Stern and Marie Macari, who have been a couple for 15 years and joined us from the lovely town of Lambertville, New Jersey, and which is just up the Delaware River from Trenton. After Hurricane Sandy, they had no heat or electricity for 9 days, and they tell me that if it weren't for the tornadoes, they'd move to Oklahoma in a heartbeat. We'll begin tonight with Marie Macari. Professor Macari was born in Queens, New York, received her undergraduate degree from Oberlin, and earned an MFA from Sarah Lawrence College. Her first book of poetry, Ivory Cradle, won the 2000 American Poetry Review Honickman First Book Prize and was introduced by Robert Creedy. She has also published 2 other collections of poems, Gloryland and She Heads into the Wilderness. The recipient of the James Dickey Award for Poetry from 5 Points magazine, Macari's poetry and essays have been published in many magazines and anthologies, and she co-edited with Carrie Salerno the forthcoming anthology, Lit from Inside, 40 Years of Poetry from Alice James Books, which is due out in January. Macari founded, directed, and taught in the Drew University MFA program in Poetry and Translation from 2008 to 2012. She has been a member of the cooperative board of Alice James Books for over 8 years, and she started an initiative at Youth Build in Trenton, New Jersey, to bring poetry and poets to the underserved community. Tonight she will read from her existing books as well as new poems from a recently completed manuscript. Please welcome Marie Macari.
Taller than me. I wonder who. Thank you for being here, and thank you to Daniel and to everyone at World Literature Today, and to the various people who have just been so good to us. We're not always treated so well. I shouldn't say that. You might take it back, but it's been so far a lovely stay here, and we are really grateful. I'm going to start with a poem from my book, Gloryland, which is a book about being in a female body, and there's several Mary poems in this book, and I understand that a number of students took a look at this poem, and there was a discussion about it, and so I thought I would read it. It's called Annunciation, and it obviously refers to when the angel Gabriel came to Mary to tell her about the big surprise. She was going to be carrying a very special child. Annunciation. When I asked her how the world began, my mother's face went blank. I was very young, trying for the first time to see the universe as endless. All I saw was darkness swirling into itself. How could anything be endless? But how could it be contained? By what? All cosmos held in the crook of an elbow. There were no answers, though I thought the clouds were great wings trying to help me, and thought my blood changed directions. What could I be but an echo, stranded here while the universe grows like a belly dense with stars, and I thought we were all orbiting inside that belly, and light could pass through me, but I wouldn't feel it. Years later, my son told me how he was conceived. He said he stood in a cloud and pointed at me. I want her. Then put down his bow and arrow and came when my back was turned and entered through my shoulder blades. What I don't know is everything. Stars, sand, salt, dust, molecules, and atoms, and how they come scudding through the door, full of news from distances I can't imagine. Someday I'll tell my sons the truth, that I knew they were coming. Nothing I could see or even feel, but a sense sometimes that I was permeable, the cells inside me gathering and spreading. I hate to think of galaxy after galaxy, all matter burning up and shucked off, the endless signs of demise and change, and I still can't grasp how anything at all can exist and what made the maker. And sometimes I'm choked with love and forget my own ignorance. Maybe just at that moment light is pressing through a tree and reaching my window, and I am satisfied, joyful, though I know there's nothing there, just light, announcing itself, coming through. And I'll read. Thank you. I'm going to read just a few poems from my most recent book, She Heads into the Wilderness. The middle of the book has a cycle of sonnets, 36 sonnets, and I'll just read a few of them. And in the briefest explanation I'll say about this cycle is that it's in conversation with our creation myth, Genesis. Okay. It's just the starting place, a hollow in the grass, a place to lay myself under the tree. I was made here. This is my home. I tell this to the two mouths of my body and the rivers between them. Paradise is the body become a lens for the light to rush through, silver flesh, phosphorus bones, the planet turning to know itself. I leave everything I have to you, dirt and dust. Make what you can of me. I was born here. Return me to grass lullabies, the black tea of creation. O broken rib earth, red orb in the tree, I touch you, my fruit, my flesh, I eat you, my forbidden. What if one has to go on without the other? What if paradise is the lake of loss where each thing is baptized, the boat of the body, clouds, rain, stones? Overhead, the trees' crowns snapping at the sky. Too late to learn to serve the gangly plant, too late to re-sow ourselves, stupid species. Your parents let things go too far. Remember the economics of death. I leave you my tons of waste, dear one. My collections, knives, photos, curtains, clocks, mirrors, my electronic name. Endangered bees rage in the wisteria. Loss of pollinators and their honey. That gold soup made of sex and light. I'm just going to read one more of these, I think, or two more. In the beginning was the animal of space licking the earth to life. The night sky lit with great herds of stars and the paths of planets growing radiant, rubbing each other. Heavens thrust and caress upon us, green and fertile in the cracks, poultice of dust, spore, pollen, and ash. Creation's luminous mouth. In the beginning, all that was made was good because it was made, and what was made and not made knew each other, and it was good. The stars in unending intercourse, heaven an amniosac, the slopping, salty center. From there, all the swimmers breaststroking, diving all night long toward Earth. So as I say, this is a group of 36 poems, and I'm just going to read one more towards the end. It's my darling poem. I thought that I couldn't talk about creation and the Genesis without talking about Darwin. And as you most likely know, Darwin spent 5 years on the Beagle, roaming the planet, picking up fossils and studying all kinds of natural things that he could find. And he slowly lost his faith, and when his favorite, later when he had a large number of children, his favorite daughter Annie died, that was sort of the end of his belief in God. Darwin came, and he was seasick for 5 years. Yeah, that's not fun. Darwin came seasick into paradise, packing the ship with crates of fossils, plants, dead birds, anything he could kill or dig up. 5 years collecting, 10 to sift through it all. And in the brain's bright cell, a viscous humming, the terrible doubts. Later, when the favored child died, when she moved through the first wilderness without him, Annie decomposing into chalky layers, no comfort. Just hymns of transmutation, songs of barnacles, earthworms, finches, and the lonely tortoise. We are parasites inside parasites, and some have wings. Annie on shore as he lurched seasick into paradise. Darwin I'm very fascinated by him. He was at one time the most famous person in the world, but he didn't like to go out. He liked to stay home. He was ill, probably from parasites he had picked up on his journeys. And he always studied the most humble things. He spent years cataloging barnacles. He's sort of the opposite of someone from our culture. He just wasn't concerned or interested in his fame. All right, I'm going to read from a new manuscript called Red Deer. And many of these poems come out of journeys I've taken. I've been privileged to be able to go and see many caves with Paleolithic cave art in France and Spain. And so many of the poems in the book come out of that. And I'll start with a poem called All Souls. And it's about a cave called Cognac Cave in the Dordogne. And in this cave is an amazing painting of a ibex. And deep in the cave, and it's painted in a way that it's framed by stalactites. So if you sort of step back and you come to the other side where the stalactites are, the stalactites make a frame around the image. And these paintings are anywhere between 12 and 30,000 years old. This ibex is probably about, I can't remember exactly, maybe 16,000 years old. All souls. Many corners turned beneath pencil-thin stalactites, thousands like upside-down candles, wet flames dripping. Beyond my mind's violence, there an ibex painted in calcite milk with wall ooze for a shaggy coat. Will it always be buried? Memory stumbling into mineral stillness, crystallized, almost lucid, or carried a forgotten animal across my shoulders, radiant and awash in lactation, made with hand, mouth, spit. Dear friend, I remember being painted in coal and blood and the long gallery where all souls parade. Thank you, Vivian. I'm going to have to take her wherever I go. Just start the clapping. This is a real short one called Headlamp. Carrying little, wearing a weak headlamp, a mile in, stumbling and wet. The cave walls like my own insides, and I, an animal, painted there. Darkness filling in my cartoon lines, my blank self. Dear friend, I am inside a hole in the earth with pots of ochre and ash. My offerings, your hair, the print of my hand. And of course, these caves, many of these caves have the negative handprints where the paint was blown either through a bone or just out of the mouth around the hand. And some of these handprints now, I've seen them in Spain, but they've recently been redated. The ones in a particular cave in Spain, they made the front page of the New York Times. They've been redated as over 40,000 years old, which means that they could have been made by Neanderthals, which I just find endlessly interesting. So there's the title poem of the book is called, it's Red Deer, and there's the very first actual cave with paintings that I was in is in Spain, northern Spain, called Covallanas Cave. And it's very, very tiny and small, and you climb up, it's a long climb up, and below the cave is another cave where people lived, and then up above is this small, small cave with private, it's almost like a personal, just a very personal private place, very tight, only a few people go in at a time. And it has red deer that were painted with fingers dipped in ochre, red ochre. And the red, it's 18,000 years old. It's still bright, bright arterial blood red. And they're so accurate, even though they're just painted with a fingertip, that they know they're female deer. They feel like they're moving. All these paintings use the shape of the rocks to make the paintings three-dimensional. This is a short poem that was a long explanation. Red Deer. Once I was an animal like you, red deer, bright as arterial blood with sure feet. The painter pressed you to life with pointer and thumb, your one eye and pert ears. Now you leap inside me over and over from my cliff of trapped air, back legs tucked. Red, red, the female creatures grazing inside, green and in motion, the earth below. All right, how are we doing? All right, let me read this one. This is called Underskin. And the most painted animals are horses and deer, and all of the animals are painted with great tenderness. Originally they called this a hunting art. It's really not a hunting art. There's just tremendous love between these people and the animals that they paint. At least that's how I see it. Maybe that's a modern interpretation. Underskin. Underskin and into the entrances, like someone tracing the rock ledge of my clavicle, peering into my windy sockets, secrets, letters written inside, never sent, scrawled like the script of my brain. So I have kept my mistakes to myself, hoarded guilt, hoarded joy too. I should have turned toward you once more, just once, for us to meet again in this world. In the painted cave of my mind, you are there, the grace of you, how I've taken your image inside me. With all my tenderness, I keep you, little horse, little deer. So the caves themselves are beautiful, and just being inside a cave with or without art is wonderful, and I'm claustrophobic, go figure, but I love being in the caves, and after being in the caves, I just had this real sense of how we live on the surface, and people did eat, it was natural for them to go in the caves. There are dried footprints of children sliding in the mud and playing in the caves that are, 15,000 years old, and it's just clear that they were very familiar with this underworld, which we don't have anymore. So it's almost like the subconscious that we don't have any access to. So let's see, which ones do I want to read? So I'm going to read this poem called Rock Flesh. And there's a little epigraph. Water dripping from these stalactites is from a rain during World War II. So I was in this cave in 2010, and that is what the guide said to us. There was water constantly dripping, and he said that was from a World War II rain. As if this cave had glands, its tapered hollows dripping, earth trying out its forms here, alien and bulbous, disordered, cracked. I feel how close crystal is to flesh, just a membrane or two apart, how the old rain can pass through the bodies of the dead, through bone and bedrock, and not taste of rot or terror, pooling in the belly, sweating all down the walls, how the porous limestone leaks its eggshell glaze like some bird birthing without sun or wind, but in a cavernous womb, crystal growing its calculated pace. Maybe I was born through strands of memory, maybe I drank mud, maybe I have filtered like rain through unending bodies. Close to rock flesh I feel here, and to the rain that fell before this life, dripping on my hair. All right. All right, two more, not too long. I can find them. So in all this studying of the caves and of the art, I got interested in Neanderthals, and we've always had this portrayal of them as this primitive, bent-over, crippled-looking, dumb creature, and to call somebody a Neanderthal is to really insult them and basically say they're dumb. But the Neanderthals were not dumb. They were more or less close to us. And you and I, all of us, anyone who's come has European blood. We're 3 to 4% Neanderthal. They've proved that now. So they were not just our neighbors in the Dordogne and in Spain, but we slept with them and reproduced with them. And now we know that they had a rich culture, and I think it's not going to be very long before they prove that they made art. So this is called Neanderthal flute, and there is a flute that they found 50,000 years old in a Neanderthal site, and many people dispute it. It's a baby or infant cave bear femur, and the holes in it are perfectly round, spaced perfectly and tonally, but there are still people who say no, an animal bit that bone, and that's the animal's teeth. It's just not possible if you see a picture of it. And it's hard for us as humans to admit that we're not the special group on the planet. And I think that's our undoing. Neanderthal flute. Foraging in roots, in labyrinths where trees spoke, scraping each other in wind. I never thought of myself as separate from my skin, without whorled fingertips, without lips. For the experiments boring into me, for the drills, for whatever makes me useful now. If not useful, then beautiful. Fossil pollen spilled over me. Open the memory room slowly. Put the singing bone to my mouth. And I'm going to end with a poem called The Extinction. Here it is. The Extinction of My Kind. It's not as dreary as it sounds. When the carcass of the mind takes off its bloody coat and wanders towards its life again, I come back from my ancient sleep. I come back on all fours and stand and drag my claws down rock and mud, leaving signs for you. I come back, lumbering into the cold, light-blinded, I come back. The earth is shining, but the place without light pulses inside me. I come back to you. Dear friend, I slept so long I went into my animal body. I longed for you there. Thank you very much.
Jerry and Marie have agreed to answer questions after the reading, so please feel free to say those until after this reading and to pose them to our guests. Gerald Stern was born in Pittsburgh in 1925, son of Ukrainian and Polish immigrants. After a stint in the army and 3 or 4 years in Europe on the GI Bill, he taught at Pitt and Temple University before joining the faculty of the Iowa Writers Workshop, where he taught for many years. More recently, Professor Stern has taught at Oberlin College and Drew University. He is the author of 17 books of poems and 2 essay collections, and his poetry has been honored with the National Book Award, the National Jewish Book Award, the Wallace Stevens Award, and many other prizes and fellowships. In 2006, he was a nominee for the Neustadt International Prize for Literature. And in January, he will be presented the Bobbitt National Prize for Poetry at the Library of Congress. His most recent books include a verse collection, In Beauty Bright, and a new collection of essays, Stealing History. One of the best characterizations of Gerald Stern's poetry can be found in Li Young Lee's nominating statement for the 2006 Neustadt Prize. in which he wrote, "In the service of envisioning a greater human totality and a fuller human identity, Gerald Stern's poems synthesize rational and non-rational elements, sacred and mundane images, spiritual and vulgar language, by turns romantic, disillusioned, hopeful, despairing, joyful, enraged, praising, lamenting, waking, and dreaming. His collection of selected poems, This Time, renders for us one of the most complete portraits of a speaker living in the Western world during the late 20th and early 21st centuries, a speaker fully alive in a personal life embedded in the life of his culture, which is further embedded in nature, which is even further embedded in the cosmos.
Wow.
The experience of these ever-widening, ever-deepening circles of context is one of the great gifts of Gerald Stern's poems can give a reader. Alongside a generous imagination and sense of humor, another gift of Stern's work is the experience of a wild, exploratory mind, a mind engaged with several subjects at once. Please extend a warm Oklahoma welcome to Gerald Stern.
You just told me that there was scotch. See, if you guys had awarded me the Newstead Prize, I would have discovered Oklahoma sooner. Then I would have had a free meal. And I don't know how much money went with it, $100, $1,000, I don't know. I'm teasing. The person who won it was certainly excellent writer. I'm taking my sweater off. And I'm wearing a hat because I'm super sensitive to light. Why are you sitting way back there? Can you hear me? Raise your hands if you cannot hear me. Terrific. But I'm going to read from two sources tonight. This book called In Beauty Bright, which is a book of poetry that came out a couple of months ago. And from this book, which just came out in paperback, it's about a year old, it's called Stealing History. Daniel described it as one of two books of essays that I wrote. I guess that's fairly accurate, but I don't think of these poems, of these sections of this book, there are 84 sections, as essays as such. It doesn't sound like Montaigne or Bacon. It sounds like me, I guess. And I'm just going to read a little bit of one of the sections. I want to read mostly poetry tonight, but I want you to be aware of this book and also to be aware of the fact that it's for sale. And you know, the table it goes everywhere. I'll just read you a few of the sections. It could be a paragraph or it could be 10 pages. Park bench, dragonflies, famous deaths, dogs, Rome and the Jews, Christians in Haiti, the train station, it's about this place, exploitation, the comic war work, four crises. So there you go, you get an idea of what's going on. Academy of Arts medal, again Haiti, an interesting section on McChrystal, several sections. Then a lot of writing about Eastern Europe, about Białystok in Poland, and the issue of neighbors, which I go into at great extent. Then a series of short sections on famous visitors to New York, Henry James, Henry Miller, Simone de Beauvoir, and so on and so on. So I'm going to pick out one essay and read about a half page from it to give you a sense of my style. Because once you get started, you say, oh, they can't live without hearing section 23. How could they go away without that? Here you've been living for years without it. You'll probably go on living a year or two longer. Does that scare you? Yeah, teasing. So this is called demystification. And it's against mystification, which can take the place of anything from the Oval Room to a church pulpit to a yarmulke, to a Christian imitation of a yarmulke, to club, to a series of medals. You see these generals betray us, for example. Is that his name? Betray us? Series of medals from here to here. This is all mystification. And we live in his presence. We're terrified by it, or we bow to it, or we pray to it, or we beg from it. So this is really an essay against demystification, if it's an essay. It's section 44. I believe firmly in demystification. With true demystification, it is not even necessary to have anarchy. Furthermore, true demystification does away with hierarchy. Demystification also leads to natural aristocracy. In fact, in demystification, no one takes his hat off to anyone, unless it be in true appreciation of a poem or a song or a speech or a field of flowers or a plate of spaghetti. And then I'm just going to read the end. Then it goes on and segues into various things. The Gilgamesh, and then into Spinoza. I don't know how that happened. And I'm just fascinated by all my life by Spinoza. And then I suddenly break in the last paragraph into a medium-sized paragraph. Suddenly I'm lucky to finally be able to say what I believe in. And if any of us could stand up and say, or sit down and say what we believe in, or what we think we believe in, it's a gift. But there's a lot of evasion here too, I must point out. And I'll read a little bit from that, and then I'll go into my poetry. I believe human beings should pay very close attention to each other. They should reach out beyond the family and help the oppressed, the trapped, and the sick. They should insist on security for and from the larger society. They should pay attention to the past, live with grief, make charity personal, teach without end, share food, listen patiently to the young, and honor their music. Turn their backs on corporations, advertising, and public lying. Hate liars, undermine bullies, love June 21st, and on that day kiss every plant and tree they see. They should love two-lane highways, old cars and old songs. They should eat with relish and study insects. They should never stop raising children. They should fight for school teachers. Pay them. Give them tenure. Let them make the rules, as Coca-Cola does. They should insist that no one be paid more than 10 times anyone else, no matter what or where. They should make fun of war, flags, uniforms, weapons, pulpits, oval offices, square ones, oblong ones, circular ones, and robes and titles, especially the titles of doctor, given to education degree holders in state colleges who address each other, believe it or not, as doctor. They should respect all dogs, love one breed intensely, eat fruit, eat root vegetables, read Lear endlessly, and be suspicious of Gertrude Stein, with the exception of her war plays. They should love New York, know 2 foreign languages, practice both regret and remorse, love their own cities, forgive but not forget, live in at least 3 countries, work in a gas station, lift boxes, eat pears, learn a trade, respect pitch pines, believe in the soul. They should stop throwing rubbish out of the window. I'm guilty. They should sit on park benches, marry young, marry late, love seals, love cows, talk to apes, weep for tigrons, cheer on the carp, encourage the salmon and the shad, and read 20 books a year. They should talk to their neighbors and eat herring and boiled potatoes. So there's this book. Well, I made a list of the poems that I would consider reading, and it's too many, of course. I was check the time because one forgets. So I'll just read a little bit. I'll start with a poem called Dumb, D-U-M-B. This thing's in a wave, so tell me if you can't hear them. Shout. Nobody shout. All right, this is called Dumb. Fleabane again, and I have another year to take up its redness, and what the wayside is like with or without it. And I have another year to charge across the wooden bridge and shake it again and take on the animals and fight the stupid bikes and the bikers who ride across with their legs spread out instead of walking their bikes, so we didn't have to be pushed against the rails. They are so dumb, and their bikes have so many dumb and useless gears, like a dumb idiot box with 2,000 stations. Only dumb ancient boxing and ancient movies worth anything. Jack Johnson or Marciano, even Orson Welles too much. Give me the unself-conscious, Carl Malden or Jean Harlow, for this is an old flower. It hates whatever it wants to. It grows where it wants, and it loves goats because of their flattened eyes. I'm fortunate to go to the Pyrenees in 1950 to hear Pablo Casals break his vow of silence, which he took during the Spanish.